One of the difficulties of MLB DFS is that you sometimes have to adjust what you're looking for to fit the specific slate. I think that's the case for tonight because usually my mindset at pitcher is strikeouts, strikeouts, strikeouts. I want as many of those whiffs as I could possibly get. Tonight, it's going to be kind of hard to find those. There aren't a lot of high strikeout pitchers, whether it be due to pitch count concerns or just due to not being super high strikeout guys. And that's going to force us to look at this slate with a bit of a different eye than we usually would. So let's take a look now, see who can emerge from kind of the dust here, and see which pitch we should target for tonight. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to take a look at this 8-game main slate with locks set for 7:05 for tonight. There is some rain potential out east. The first game affected by that is in Philadelphia as the Phillies host the Orioles. Pretty constant around 20% rain odds for the entire game. So I'd keep an eye on that. Similar forecast in New York. We got both the Yankees and the Mets playing there. Yankees are facing the Braves. Mets are facing the Nationals. And that could be an issue. So it's hard to tell this far out what the weather looks like there. Check back on the afternoon stream. Should have a better idea of the weather at that point. Also, check out Kevin Roth of Roto-Grinders on Twitter. He has a pretty good read on this stuff because he's a natural meteorologist. So I would hold off judgment on those for right now, but just noting to you, if you want to use any Phillies, Orioles, Yankees, Braves, Mets, Nationals, be aware that things could get funky there. We'll be talking about a couple of those teams later on. We'll get into the pitching preview in just 1 second. But first, with Major League Baseball officially being back, so is FanDuel's Home Run Challenge. Every day, you'll be able to draft any 3 hitters on the slate where only home runs count. If your lineup scores 3+ home runs in the contest, you will win a share of $2,000 in cash. If your lineup scores 6+ home runs, you'll earn an additional share of a $10,000 bonus cash prize. It is a great way to make your night that much more interesting. But don't just take my word for it. Head to FanDuel.com and play for free today. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today. Eligibility restrictions apply. I also did mention that 4 p.m. stream that is on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook, so make sure you're following us in those places. The solo shot is also live in the morning every day on YouTube. Shout out to all the YouTube viewers right now. You can watch it there to get your insights earlier on in the day if you want that. We also have a lot of stuff over on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Tom Vecchio is still doing NBA and NHL podcasts every day. The ones for today's slate already posted. And then Brandon Gadula and I did a PGA DFS podcast yesterday to get you set for the Wyndham Championship. Just search for the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you consume your podcast. Pitching preview for this Wednesday main slate. Zach Greinke is the highest salaried pitcher. He checks in at $9,800, followed by Kenta Maeda at $8,700. Blake Snell is $85,000, and Masahiro Tanaka is $8,300. And that's it as far as the high salary guys. It drops off after that. So you can kind of see why we'd have some concerns. But I think that the one guy here who can check a lot of boxes, can get his strikeouts, and I think has the potential to pitch deep in a game, checking a lot of those boxes, is Kenta Maeda. Now, Maeda, we're kind of projecting here because he has not been allowed to go deep in a game yet. He has gone 84, 83, and 80 pitches. Part of that may be due to circumstances because in the first game where he went 84 pitches, the Twins are up 10-2 after 5 innings. So Maeda left the game. Second game, they were up 3-0 in the 7th inning. They were up 5-3 in the third game in the 7th inning. So I think that they've been confident enough in their bullpen to hand the game over there and let them close things out. But the bullpen been a little bit taxed recently. They had a bullpen game just last night. They pushed Maeda back one day, which means they could potentially let him go a bit longer for tonight. And that's a good thing. I think that there is the potential for Maeda to go longer tonight than he has so far this year. And we can't say that for all the high salaried pitchers for tonight. And the effectiveness for Maeda is more of a lock to be a good thing because the 3 starts for him so far this year have been tremendous. He has a 3.41 skill interactive ERA with a 26% strikeout rate and a 5% walk rate. Maeda last year started to do a good job of limiting hard contact, and that is carried over to 2020 as well. His hard hit rate against 28%, too small of a sample to think we can expect that going forward. But again, he did this last year too, so it shouldn't be a huge shock to see Maeda keeping things in the soft contact department. He also has a 14.2% swinging strike rate, so that strikeout rate at 26% should hold pretty steady. The Brewers' strikeout rate against righties since the start of last year is 24%. That is high enough to justify using a pitcher against them, but in this year, and I think we can start to look at strikeout rates for 2020 because strikeouts tend to stabilize more quickly, and the Brewers' strikeout rate this year is 30% against righties, so Maeda is in a good spot. He'll be effective when he's out there. He has a path to a big game. Even if he doesn't go, 7 or so innings, he can still get to 10 strikeouts because of his abilities and the high strikeout nature of the Brewers. And I think that that's a lot more than we can say about most of the pitchers on this slate. And I think that helps a bit in crossing out the concerns with the pitch count. So Maeda, again, requires a recalibration of our expectations. We're not trying to chase dudes who go 84, 85 pitches. But I think on this slate, and given Maeda's specific context in which his pitch count has been down, I think we can afford to go here, and I do want to go here. So Kenta Maeda, my number one pitcher for tonight. The bigger adjustment for me tonight is that I don't need as many strikeouts to compete because I don't see a lot of guys on the slate who can really rack up the strikeouts. That's always the big concern when it comes to Zach Greinke. And I think with there not being an opportunity cost in using Zach Greinke relative to the other people, I think that we can justify going with him, even though his salary is higher than I was expecting at $9,800. Greinke's velocity this year has been super low, and that's always something we should flag and try to look for effectiveness when that happens, but it hasn't mattered yet. Greinke's swinging strike rate is equivalent to what it was last year. He's had good results. He's not getting knocked around. So the velocity is something that is on my radar. It is a concern. It's part of why I prefer Maeda, but it did get better in his most recent starts, and his situation is really good for tonight. He's facing the Giants. They have a 24% strikeout rate versus righties, a 90 WRC plus as well. So this is a plus matchup. This is a good park for pitching as well. So sure, Greinke's not a high strikeout guy, but the overall pitching talent has still been good. He's been leaning more on his changeup and his curveball for the past 12 starts now. I think it was right before he got traded to Houston. He got a 3.91 skill interactive ERA in that time, 22% strikeout rate, 4% walk rate while keeping the hard contact in check. So no, if Greinke were $9,800 on the usual slate, I probably would not go here. But there is a lack of top-end options on this slate. I think there is plenty of value in the hitters, at least in a couple of the stacks we'll discuss. And Greinke is steady overall. So in this spot, I am okay with Greinke, even at $9,800. Again, I wouldn't go here on most slates, but I think tonight it makes sense putting him number 2 behind Maeda. Because outside of those two guys, it's really hard to find reliable pitchers. The other two guys who are above $8,000 were Masahiro Tanaka and Blake Snell. Tanaka has not gone longer than 59 pitches in any start this year. Blake Snell, we'll talk about in things to watch. He's not going long either. And not many other guys in the slate have the ability to have pop games. They don't have the juice to get you a top-end score. Taijuan Walker might, though. So I think he'll be my third-ranked guy at $6,700. Walker, the overall numbers this year are not great in 3 starts. He has a 5.79 ERA and a 4.93 skill interactive ERA, so both the results and the peripherals are lagging, and he has just a 7% swinging strike rate. But he did have one big game in that stretch. He had 8 strikeouts over 7 innings of one-hit ball against Oakland in his second outing. They're a good offense. I know Dylan Bundy mowed through him last night, but they're a good offense, and Walker went 94 pitches in that start. He did struggle in his other 2 starts, but he showed he is capable of having a big game. And the struggles that Walker has had overall are understandable given the teams he has faced. So far, in his 3 starts of the Mariners, Walker has faced Houston, Oakland, and the Angels. Those teams are 1st, 5th, and 6th in WRC plus against righties since the start of last year. Tonight, Walker's not facing them. Walker gets the Rangers, which inspires all these Walker Texas Ranger things in your brain. But regardless, the Rangers 27th in WRC plus against righties. They have a 25% strikeout rate. So yeah, the pitch count has been low in the other 2 starts. The effectiveness hasn't been that great, but it seems like the pitch count was low because of the decreased effectiveness, and they did let him go long when he was dealing in that game against Oakland. So I can see a situation where, again, Walker, kind of like Maeda, I can project, or I can see a path to him pitching deeper in the game. He's facing a high strikeout team. He has shown single game upside so far this year. He's only $6,700. So you can go pretty crazy at hitter if you use Taijuan Walker. And I think it's worth a roll of the dice on a slate that is so thin at the top. So to me, it's Maeda 1, Greinke 2, Walker 3, and the drop-off after that is pretty deep. So I will be having a tighter core at pitcher for tonight than I had for last night's slate outside of Max Scherzer. Let's move now to the stacks because I think that there are some pretty good options for tonight. One of them, unfortunately, could be impacted by weather. I mentioned the weather could be dicey in Philadelphia, so make sure you're keeping an eye on that. But if the weather does clear, I think it's fair to put the Phillies at the top of our stacking list because they're facing Wade LeBlanc, and LeBlanc has had rough results and rough peripherals both this year and last year. His ERAs in those 2 years, 5.71 and 6.91. His skill interactive ERAs are 4.73 and 4.84. He doesn't get a lot of ground balls. He allows a ton of balls in play, which is a perfect formula for stacking. And the park is really nice too. So I want to go with the Phillies. It does require you to make sure you are around leading into lock to make sure you can ensure the weather there will be clear. But I do think if things wind up being clear, the Phillies are going to be my top stack of the night. Looking at LeBlanc from a splits perspective, a platoon split perspective, he does get a lot more strikeouts against lefties. It's at 22% since the start of last year, so that does go up, but he doesn't get many ground balls against them. So I think that Bryce Harper is still very much a great option, despite the fact this is a lefty-on-lefty game. But the guy I want to focus on most here is Rhys Hoskins, because his salary is down to $2,900 because he has 0 home runs so far this year. We also have to remember that the Phillies missed some time because they were scheduled to play, or they did play the Marlins, and they wanted to make sure there was no COVID there. So Hoskins still at 52 plate appearances, not a huge sample, and he's walked in a quarter of those plate appearances, literally a 25% walker, which is just nuts. And his strikeout rate is 17%. So he's still seeing the ball well, very clearly, maybe too well potentially, but he has a 48% hard hit rate. His ground ball rate is only 31%, so it's not as if he's burning worms out there. So people occasionally ask me for home run calls, whether it be on the 4 p.m. stream or other times on Twitter. Rhys Hoskins is getting his first home run of the season tonight. You heard it here. Yeah, Rhys Hoskins going yard. I know that's not Super Bowl, but hey, 52 plate appearances, no dingers. He's getting that first one for tonight. So Rhys Hoskins guaranteed to go deep. He and Andrew McCutchen, great values if you need help getting up to Harper, or if you need help getting to Zach Greinke as well. So the Phillies, if the weather allows, will be my number one stack for tonight. The second stack, not as good of a park, but no weather concerns because they have a retractable roof. The matchup here is super fun, and that's the Astros against Trevor Cahill in Houston. Cahill had a finger issue to open the year, so he's making his first start of the season. And last year, he did open this season as a starter for the Angels, and that did not last long because in his 11 starts, Cahill allowed a 47% hard hit rate. He had just an 18% strikeout rate, and those were rough numbers. So he got demoted to the bullpen, and even when you look at his numbers just as a reliever, his strikeout rate did not go up. He still allowed a ton of hard contact. So it's hard for me to see him having success as he moves into the rotation now for San Francisco and has to face a team as good as Houston's. He will get some ground balls, Cahill will, but the ground ball rate last year slipped to 46%. It was 53% the year before that. So he's allowing lots of hard contact, not a lot of strikeouts, not enough ground balls, and he's putting all that up against an elite level offense. So I know we've been stacking the Astros a lot recently, but sign me up once again when they face Cahill for tonight. We actually have an addition here. Usually it's like me auto-lecturing you to use Yuli Gurriel. Instead, we have an additional value on this Astros team. That's Michael Brantley. Because Brantley has sat so often this year, his salary is down to $3,000, but when he plays, he's still batting cleanup. He is making decent contact despite that lower body injury. So no, he's not the most inspiring DFS asset because he's not some huge power guy. But if you have him plus Gurriel plus Carlos Correa, that's pretty easy to get to and stack the middle of this order. I'm also very okay with Kyle Tucker, who seems to have settled into the 7th spot in this order. He's only $2,800, couple sources of upside out of him. So I think the 4 through 7 batters on the Astros, very cost-effective, a team you can stack even while using Zach Greinke. And if you decide to go with someone like Maeda or go with Taijuan Walker, you can load up on their super top-end individuals. Carlos Correa, though, at $3,300 is someone I want to get to even when I don't need the salary savings. $3,300 I think is too low for how well he's been hitting. I know they keep him low in the order for some reason, but still someone I want to get to. I think he is worth prioritizing because things have been going really well for him basically since the start of last year. So Astros number 2 stack for me for tonight behind the Phillies. To the 3rd stack, the matchup for the Dodgers may not be super obvious on paper. They're facing Zach Davies. He had a 3.55 ERA last year. It's 2.87 this year. But I still think this is a good time to stack against him with this Dodgers team. And the main reason is that Davies allows a ton of balls in play. He has a 15% strikeout rate, or had a 15% strikeout rate last year with an 8% walk rate, so about 77% balls in play. Strikeout rate this year is up. It's 22%, so that's an improvement. And his swinging strike rate is up too. But it's still just 8.9%, and even that may be higher than it will be long-term because he's kind of the opposite of Taijuan Walker. He's faced some really bad teams in his first 3 starts. The teams that he's faced are ranked 24th, 29th, and 14th in WRC Plus against righties since the start of last year. So overall, really rough teams. The Dodgers are not rough. They are 2nd in WRC Plus behind only the Astros since the start of last year. So this is a much tougher test, and Davies is not getting the ground balls that he used to get. Had a 48% ground ball rate in 2018, 40% last year, and it's at 25% in a very small sample this year. If you're not going to get strikeouts, you need to excel in those departments, and Davies is not doing that right now, and he has to face one of the toughest matchups possible. So I think we should stack against him here, even though the results say that Davies, for a decently large sample now, has been a good pitcher. I want to stack against him with the Dodgers. The Dodgers have gone back to Jock Peterson in the leadoff role. He's not hitting all that well this year, but he's still hitting dingers. That's kind of all we care about with Jock. He's $2,900, so I'm going to include him in my stacks, assuming he does continue to hit leadoff. But if he were to jump back down lower in the order, if Mookie goes back in the leadoff spot, then I am okay jumping ship on Jock Peterson in that scenario. So Peterson, contingent on where he bats in the order. If he's leadoff, cool. Lots of upside for $2,900. If not, I am okay looking elsewhere within this stack. Let's finish up with things to watch for today. Blake Snell is on this slate, and he's the biggest name, I would say, at least from a DFS perspective at pitcher. And we're trying to scramble for guys, but I just can't do it until his pitch count goes up. It sounds like he thinks he can go 5 innings or 75 pitches, according to Mark Topkin of the Tampa Bay Times. And that's not enough for me to use Blake Snell. I know that's not super far from where Maeda has been or where Taijuan Walker has been, but at least those 2 guys have the potential to go longer, whereas Snell does not. So we might be able to buy in soon, but we're not there yet. We need the pitch count to continue to rise on Blake Snell. Not there yet. So eventually we'll be here, but tonight is not the night for me. I've been using pitchers against the Padres for a while now, and it very much has not worked. Dustin May didn't work. Ross Stripling didn't work. So it's been rough, and thankfully, I can try to benefit from the Padres offense for tonight because they're facing Tony Gonsolin. It's a spot start for Gonsolin for the Dodgers, and he's another guy who lets up a lot of hard contact. It's at 48% in his career as a starter. And the Padres have shown they are very able to supply said hard contact as well. So I think the Padres are a stacking candidate for tonight if you want to go both sides of that Dodgers game. Obviously, you want Fernando Tatis Jr. in there if you can get there. Trent Grisham is a great option, too. He is $3,200. He's been hitting the ball really well since last year in Milwaukee. That has followed him over to San Diego. $3,200, good salary. So I think that Tatis and Grisham, the top 2 guys here. It also does seem like Eric Hosmer is still trying to lift the ball. It's not as extreme as it was before he went on the injured list with that illness, but I don't hate the idea of using him either. So Hosmer is I can't tell you the last time I used Eric Hosmer in DFS, but now that he's back, still seems to be hitting some fly balls. I would be okay with doing so for tonight, just because potentially some changes in that swing plane for Eric Hosmer. Finally, the Mets have not confirmed whom they're starting for today, but it sounds like it'll be Walker Lockett. They did not confirm that last night, so this could change. But Lockett, big ground ball guy in the minors, but his plate discipline numbers have been pretty rough, and they've been rough enough where the batted ball numbers haven't mattered. He has an 8.84 ERA in the big leagues, despite a 47% ground ball rate and a 35% hard hit rate. So assuming Lockett plays and that the weather doesn't get too bad, I think the Nationals are definitely a team that you can stack. Lockett, I know we don't want to target pitchers who have high ground ball rates because we don't want singles and ground balls, but he will probably be out of the game pretty quick, which gets us access to middle relievers, and that's a good thing for sure. So I am in on the Nationals here. I love me some Eric Thames at $2,300 if you need a value there. So the Nationals could be a good source for today, assuming that Lockett is confirmed and assuming that that weather clears up in New York. That is all that we have for today. But again, it's probably a good day to make sure you check back in at 4 p.m. Eastern time to check out our Q&A stream. So subscribe to the FanDuel YouTube page. Also check us out on Twitch and Facebook and get those questions in. Updates on weather there, updates on lineups, and any changes at pitcher will be reflected there as well. Don't forget to check out our PGA podcast, getting you set for the Wyndham Championship. Also, check out Tom Vecchia's podcast for the NBA and the NHL. Those are all on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. So find that wherever you listen to your podcast. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. We are on Google Podcasts, TuneIn, whatever it may be. You can find us there. And if you like what you hear, please leave a rating and review as well. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. If you have any questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Thank you all for tuning in for today. Good luck with your DFS lineups for tonight. Hopefully that weather clears up out in Philadelphia. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.